Good morning, everybody, or whatever time it is. Good day, I should say, or good night, or good evening, I guess would be more appropriate. Welcome, it's Dr. A from History Surfer, and at the request of some of my students, I've just decided to give a short tutorial here on how to begin a research project. I'll probably do some more related to writing essays and about things like plagiarism, but this is how to kind of begin your project, and can be daunting for many of my students, as some of them are, first-time college students, or perhaps haven't had much experience doing this type of thing. But try to keep in your mind that this is something that you can do if you follow some simple tips I hope will help you. First of all, of course, you have to choose a topic. And depending on what class you're in is going to depend on what type of topic you are going to choose. Sometimes topics are assigned. Of course, this makes it a lot easier. But most of the time, in my experience, or at least when I'm teaching, I should say, and from when I was a student, I find that you have to really focus on staying within the parameters set by the professor. So, for example, in my art history class, I have students choose an artist to research, and that artist, then they have to decide if there is enough material for them to start working with. So that's going to be your big question. Are there enough sources? And are there enough sources that are acceptable? Acceptable sources mean, of course, scholarly sources. So how do I find those? Well, you have to remember you don't want to over-rely too much on regular Google. This is how a lot of my students get into trouble. They want to just go to the things they know how to do, and then they don't find anything that fulfills what I believe to be scholarly. .edu, .gov, or .org are the only real sources that scholars look at. So how do I do that? Well, I think that if you use Google as a way to kind of give yourself a broad view, maybe some ideas, say, put in Michelangelo and see what comes up. And then you can start using more scholarly search engines and databases, such as Google Scholar, JSTOR, of course, the libraries out there, and look in their catalog. Google Books works. And talking about books, consider using books. I know this is strange for some of you that you don't read books and you don't know what a scholarly book looks like. So remember, books are good. Publications like magazines or newspapers, which are credible. Also, don't forget scholarly journals, which are available to various disciplines. When I say books that are scholarly and publications like magazines or newspapers that are credible, books that have endnotes and footnotes are scholarly, and publications like National Geographic, Smithsonian, Wall Street Journal for newspapers, New York Times, those are all things we consider good. And when I say scholarly journals, every discipline has its own journal. So here's, some ideas hopefully to get you started. In addition, once you have these preliminary steps begun, start keeping track of where you're getting information from, and then begin to think of a thesis that you want to prove. Why is your work important? What are you contributing? And while I know many of you are like, I'm just a beginning student, or I don't have, a focus on this, just think, I always think, why am I writing this? What do I want to say? Choose sources that help you support that. And these are just preliminary. You can change your thesis when you're writing, but just get something down. Like, for instance, if I was going to do a paper on an artist, I would probably choose somebody that I felt had contributed something significant, such as a female artist I like, Artemisia Gentileschi, who had to prove that women could be artists and could be professional artists, even though she herself went through some pretty terrible things. So I'm going to look at sources and think, does this help me with that? I'm also going to include other information, of course. I don't want to, just pick and choose things that fit what I want, but I do want things that'll help me support that. Number 4, make a rough outline in this process too. It helps keep you on track. If you don't use an outline, it doesn't have to be a real formal one at this point. I mean, some people really like to refine them, but when I'm doing this, I like to start formulating ideas like, what am I going to include? Things like the history, say, I'll go back to using my example, and of Artemisia, and then how she got trained, and then what happened to her, and then how she was successful. You do outline so you don't become repetitive, and that happens a lot of times. And number 5, I've added some additional videos. Let me just turn my camera a little bit here that I'd like you to watch to help you. And I have linked those in the comment section below this video. When you watch everything and you digest it all, leave me a comment that you have finished these and let me know how this tutorial was helpful. Happy researching. Peace out. Dr. A.